My sources tonight, former acting vice chief of the National Guard Bureau, Major General Randy Manner. We have former communications director for the Democratic National Committee, Karen Finney, and editor at the National Review, Ramesh Panduru. General, thank you so much for chatting with us about this. Right now, we should note, have been critical of this mission that we are seeing, the National Guard having been called to Washington and activated here and brought in from other states for. What did you think of this photo op today with President Trump and law enforcement and Guard members?
Like most Americans, I fully support a community-based law enforcement system combined with a great judicial system. This at best is a police operation, not a military operation. Our National Guardsmen and women are not trained in this. This is something that's potentially a very dangerous situation. In contrast to law enforcement officers, which receive 4 to 6 months of training, our soldiers and airmen receive a few hours at best. They are trained to close with and destroy the enemy. And last time I checked, that's not happening in Washington, D.C., nor should it happen in any American city. I'm also very concerned that, putting it bluntly, readiness, our nation's readiness is being reduced by using our soldiers and airmen in these kinds of missions that, quite frankly, in my 35 years of service in the National Guard and the regular Army, would not have been justified under any other president. In addition, there's no money for this. It's something where Congress has not allocated additional funds, so the National Guard Bureau right now is scrambling to pull money back from the states to be able to pay the pay and allowances of these young men and women. That means that in September, the last month of the fiscal year, it's very likely that some soldiers will not be paid in the month of September. So that's something that we have to be very concerned about. And lastly, we have to remember that these young men and women are citizen soldiers, citizen airmen. They are being pulled out of college if they're in college. They're being pulled from their civilian jobs, many of which they actually make more money in their civilian jobs than they do in the military. So they're having a cash flow issue. And then if they have children, they're married in some way, this reduces the ability of a missing family member during vacation month in our country, as well as, of course, back to school for children. Yeah. And those spouses will not be there. I find this appalling.
And again, General, Trump floated that this law enforcement crackdown would go on to other places. It's unclear what that will look like because D.C. is sort of specific in how he can do this. But you saw L.A. What is your concern for how civilians will start perhaps to view the military as this might expand?
I hope I am wrong with my next prediction. I am 100% certain the president will move troops into other cities that are basically not supportive of his policies. I hope I'm proved wrong. The other concern, of course, is that all of these soldiers and airmen, which are, from the United States citizens' point of view, they're there to rescue them in times of trouble, during hurricanes, during floods, forest fires. They're there to help them. And here we have, quite frankly, almost an intimidation factor going on with these large military vehicles and, in many cases, armed soldiers and airmen. This is going to change the tremendous support that so much of our country has for our soldiers and airmen. And I'm very concerned about the relationship between the National Guard and our citizens, as well as what impact it might have in recruiting.
And I've talked with some people. There is intimidation. They're feeling that right now. And I want to be clear, Karen, D.C. has gotten better for sure on crime. You can feel that. It tracks with the statistics, but it still has major challenges. We should also be very clear about that. How do Democrats counter what Trump is saying without appearing to be not sensitive to issues of public safety?
So I think there's a couple of things. For starters, the irony that J.D. Vance was out talking about the bill, the ugly bill, I will never call it their language, when it's the Trump administration that cut millions of federal dollars that go to violence interruption programs, Violence Against Women, Women's Act, other programs that do prevention, community policing. So they actually are making America less safe right now with the cuts they've made to police forces around the country. And you actually have a letter that was written by a number of police chiefs from red cities, blue cities, to say, please restore these funds. So I think we've got to talk about what public safety really is. Certainly, I'm going to say the obvious thing, Democrats should not be lectured to about public safety or law and order from a convicted felon, right? Donald Trump is, and by the way, as a person who lives in D.C., it's very clear he does not care about the people of D.C. This is all for show. I mean, if you cared, he wouldn't have cut the budget by $1 billion. And today, when he was talking about, I'm very good at grass, and we're gonna make the grass. Well, what about the public schools? What about, safety services, community services that you've cut? So if you really care about the people of D.C. and if you really care about public safety, you're doing all the wrong things that actually have efficacy and we know work.
For youth crime, for instance, which D.C. could really use some help with. I want to ask you, Ramesh, because Republicans just feel so comfortable with this issue that this is a strength for them. They can lean into this. How easy is it for them to goad Democrats into this? How perilous is this for Democrats?
Well, I think it depends on what the Democrats say. I think the arguments that this is not the right solution, the sorts of arguments that General Manners made, I think can be effective. I think saying there's no problem in D.C. or minimizing the problem, that I think is the wrong course, because I think even if people look at the statistics and see the decline, they're going to see that the decline was from a super high number to a high number, and that violence is unacceptably and intolerably high in the district, yet was tolerated and accepted for too long. I think people are going to prefer the wrong solution to the real problem to people saying that there is no problem. I also think the message that it's a distraction from Jeffrey Epstein is not going to work. I think that Republicans being tough on crime, being performatively and visibly tough on crime, that's something they will do every day of the week, whether or not Jeffrey Epstein is threatening to lurk in the news.
Although one of the talking points I heard from a Trump surrogate just last night was that they took 28 child predators off the street. I said, you know how you can get a whole bunch more? Release the Epstein files, because there's a whole bunch of child predators who have been running around for years without any accountability. So I think they're going to have to watch their talking points while they're at it.
Touche, Karen. So the split screen, Ramesh, today you had Trump out, and he is sort of, he's promoting this takeover flanked by service members and law enforcement. Then you have J.D. Vance. He's in Georgia. He's promoting the big bill. But I wonder, as you look at Vance promoting this, how good of a messenger is he on this issue?
Well, I thought that Vance's comments about freeing and liberating D.C. from crime, from fear, I think that was actually a pretty strong message from him. I don't know whether the message on the One Big Beautiful Bill, or whatever they call that in law, is going to be as helpful. Not even so much that I think it's a terrible bill. I wasn't a huge fan of it. But if you think about the major victory of that bill, it was just taking a tax cut that already existed and extending it. It's hard to say to people, our big accomplishment is just leaving things the way they were.
And Vance was actually in Fayette County, Georgia. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Republicans have seen a serious slide of support there in the Trump era, actually a 28-point swing toward Democrats, which I think would raise a lot of eyebrows for people. What do you think about that and him going there?
Well, I think a couple of things. I mean, clearly they're trying to see if they can swing that back the other direction. But it's part of why we've had all of this performative activity from the White House over the last several weeks. It's not just about the Epstein files. It's about the fact that for several months now, we've had poll after poll showing Trump's numbers sliding, approval rating sliding, handling of the economy, handling of foreign policy, handling of inflation. And by the way, with all of these things he's doing, inflation is still a problem for people, and they know it. And the bill that they passed is so vastly unpopular. So J.D. Vance may be a good messenger, but I don't think people are buying it. So clearly, and I think, look, it's part of why we had this redistricting, racial gerrymandering in Texas, because Trump understood he can't win if he plays fair. So he's trying to cheat in order to guarantee control of Congress.
I so agree that inflation is a potential problem for this administration. We just had an administration which minimized that problem, which told people, whatever you think you're concerned about, you shouldn't be. And it did not work. You cannot tell people that the problems they're having with bills don't exist.
All right, Epstein files starting to go to Congress tomorrow from DOJ. James Comer, the chairman of House Oversight, says his goal is to publicly release as quickly as we can. He stressed they want to be careful not to harm victims. There's going to be stuff that is redacted, as there should be. because there are victims. They were children when this occurred. This is a politically vulnerable issue. What are you expecting?
Listen, I think that there is a group of Republicans who spent the last 4 to 5 years drilling people with the idea that there's going to be all kinds of revelations, all kinds of powerful people are going to be toppled. That is a demand that cannot be satisfied. Whatever comes out will be less sensational than what people were promised, and there will be a group of people saying, what are you hiding? They created that problem.
Yeah, it'll be up to the survivors also to kind of set the tone for how this goes, because, you know, as they've said over and over, every time they have to talk about this, they have to relive it. And they want justice, and they're calling for the files to be released. So I think they're actually going to be a very important part of this. The president can control them. Congress can't control them. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, and some victim lawyers. We've spoken with a very important lawyer of some victims who has not been contacted. So we'll see how that goes with the committee. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate your insights tonight. And up next, a major victim